Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. This is going to be a coverage of a great movie from 1973 called Westworld. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting live from the Pine Hills Palace just west of Orlando, Florida. I have on the SAT line the real Dr. V. Good evening, sir.
How's it going?
It's going good. I'm really excited to talk about this film because it's been a little while since we've done what I call, air quote, real sci-fi films. But for me, Michael Crichton has always done a great job with his films, obviously Jurassic Park and some others. It all comes back to 1973, Yul Brenner as the Man in Black originally, and Westworld.
We also had the 1967 Playboy centerfold, and Randall.
There's some cuties in here, which will discuss momentarily. My initial thoughts are this. This is it's a very good film that's great in parts. I think the first half of the movie, basically, or third, or whatever you want to call it, the first act, first two acts, it sets up so many wonderful questions that only science fiction can really, really do with what happens. And unfortunately, it kind of devolves into like a little chase thing at the end, which it's not bad. It's just, when you get this just massively conceptual type of thing going on in a modern day setting at that time, and even today, it's still effective. It's fantastic. And it just, like I said, turns into like a chase sort of thing, action ending, and kind of leaves it at that before another movie they do a little bit later. But yeah, I think it's like I said, it's a good film, done great. Yul Brenner's fantastic in it. It's visually, for the time, very stunning. And for me, this was one of the very first films I've ever seen ever in my life. We saw it in the drive-in theater when I was a kid, and I remember it freaked me out because of Yul Brenner getting acid in the face and still hunting the guy down. It was Michael Myers before Michael Myers. It was pretty good. I highly recommend this film to it. What are your initial impressions about it?
Well, this is the first film of his design I've ever came across. Yul Brenner before I watched Magnificent Sevens. Okay. So I never watched The King and I. Apparently that's where he did that too. Like I said, this is basically what your world of tomorrow. You get tickets, you go to the show, and there's 3 different worlds. There's Rome, there's like the West World, and there's another one. I forgot what it was. Future World. And what happens? I'll just say what happens in this thing is like these guys go in there thinking like, yeah, there's robots, you can do what they want, even though they look so lifelike. Guys are like, they think we're going to be cowboys in there, and these guys don't realize that, well, the androids have been having problems. They've been starting, there's some kind of virus or something going through or something, but they're breaking down and they're going crazy. Yul Brenner being the guy who basically goes in he's supposed to be the bad guy in the actual show. And he decides, you know what? I'm gonna challenge these guys to a duel. And they're thinking, "Oh, this is all fake." And until he actually guns down one of the guy, and then the guy goes to run and gets shot in the back, I believe. So, but yeah, it's like so. I mean, when they take these machines apart, you see like Yul Brenner there, and his face is kind of off. I remember him correctly, or his back or something like that. But they had him parts. And they're like, whoa, we don't know what happened, but there's nothing wrong with them. So they're like, well, guys are like, whoa, we can't shut down. Put them back together. Send them back out.
Yeah, there's some really great scenes in here that have absolutely nothing to do with the two people that are enjoying it. Because let's be honest, this movie came out at a time when theme parks weren't theme parks that we think of today, specifically Disney. So here in Central Florida, of course, we've got Disney, we've got Epcot, which, and then we've got Universal, we've got tons of them. But at the time, it was so conceptual. Hey, we've got 3 different massive resorts. It's super expensive. That only the super rich elite types can go there. But of course, the way they do it, it's not woke. There's no PC stuff to it. It's a couple people, and people might argue that it's rich, successful white people, so therefore it's skewed in their fantasies. But basically it's males, at least that we've seen, and of course they're going to want to have relations with the androids there, and they're in the old west. But the thing about this movie that's frustrating, and it's good, but it's teasing, is that they introduce so many possible areas that this could go, in addition to a few clips of some of the other worlds and how they're different. But even just the one guy that was kind of hesitant about getting into it because they're fake and all that, and then he makes sweet android love, and then he starts feeling himself a little bit. And you're right, his buddy gets shot down by the bad guy, and that's when the shit hits the fan, so to speak. But the best scenes to me aren't even those scenes. It's all about the medical manufacturing business side to it, where at the beginning you have the clips of them getting there and getting their wardrobe and picking out what gun they want, all the stuff that would just give you a vacation boner, right? If you had all this money to try something out. So it's presented really well, and they're not in a rush to do it. But the doctor scenes are fantastic because, to your point,
Yeah.
they're going over the data of the malfunction rates, and they're in a group, and this is typically how it happens in businesses, where in manufacturing, you sit down, you have your little war room, and you go over things that are going with you, and you have somebody basically guiding it. And you see the one scientist who's really competent going through and walking through the room saying, well, what happened to this one? Oh, this one just shut down. Oh, what happened to this one? Well, this one, well, try this and try that. You don't get the sense that he or anybody involved in the organization is taking shortcuts. And I say this because if anybody listening to this is a fan of, theme parks, obviously Entertainment from I Love Comics has his own channel of the Homegrown Tourist, where he covers Disney and other parks. He's a master at that. There used to be something called the Disney Experience, super high end. Now it's not like that anymore. And unfortunately, most people that have only been to Disney maybe once or twice in their life in the past generation cannot relate to what it used to be. And that's where old-time Central Floridians like myself kind of bemoan the lack of high-quality experience when you go to those theme parks. You get that sense here in Westworld that these people are getting the elite experience that you could ever ask for, and it's phenomenal. I mean, it's so open world, it's incredible. And teasing some scenes out of Future World or anything else, not just having sex, but the fights and the traveling and everything else there too. It's fantastic. Yeah,
it was cool to see we had James Brolin in here, Josh Brolin's dad.
Yes,
is playing Blaine. Unfortunately, he ends up getting shot. He's the guy who gets shot by Yul Brenner.
Yes.
You got what's the other guy's name is Richard Benjamin.
Mustache.
Yeah. He because they both him and James Brolin woke up in a brothel drunk, and what's going on, and then like the guys challenged, like Yul Brenner challenged him to a gunfight. They go, oh, it's this play for show. Like, they don't know what's going on. They didn't realize that the androids are starting to broke down stuff. And yeah, so you see, Blaine gets shot, aka James Brolin shot, his friend, decides to run away, and as the android's chasing him, he goes to hide in the repair bay of where they repair all the androids. He pretends to be an android in there, and Yul Brenner doesn't see him, recognize him at first until he throws the acid in Yul Brenner's face, and you see part of his face is melt off. Yeah. I was like, this is Terminator, like before Terminator.
It scared me as a kid looking at the big screen where all of a sudden you turn around, and the score is interesting because there's electronic music mixed in, but it's basically a Western type setup, but there's like a combination of these things. So it's just kind of bordering on creepy area. It's very effective for what it is. And especially when Yul Brenner comes on here, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but basically him and Kojak redefined what it meant to be sexy by being bald and all that too, and being a self-content individual. And here you've got Yul Brenner just walking around with this hands on his holster, staring at you, walking like a robot, and he does a fantastic job. It's incredible. It's much, much better, in my opinion, to a show that I believe you've told me you have not seen, which is the HBO reboot of Westworld.
The reason I said I didn't watch because, one, Hollywood likes to change things and make everything PC. So as far as I know, it could be woke or could not be woke. But then again, whether it's woke or not, they change things, and you cannot replace Yul Brenner. Sorry, you can't. Unless they got a CG in there or some guy over Yul Brenner's face, because no thanks.
Yeah, now I want to compare and contrast it to the show, because I think most people are coming to Westworld, the movie we're talking about, backwards because they've seen the HBO show or they've been interested in it. And I watched the first 2 seasons that started to third, and basically wish I had all my time back because I was really jacked up to see this reboot, knowing Anthony Hopkins was in it. And regardless of actors' politics and what they believe in, all that, they spent a crap ton of money on it here. Visually, it's quite striking, and you definitely get a great sense and feel of what's going on when you're watching this. But the whole thing, the whole approach to it, to me, is wrong in that it seems like they're really emphasizing the consciousness of the robots and the fact that they want to be equal, and like the human race is kind of like bad. Like, we're supposed to be rooting for robots. Well, one, they're robots. If you have sex with a robot like everybody did in the TV show and also in the movie, they're still robots. It's a glorified sex doll. Let's just shoot straight here. Forget this emotional attachment nonsense and everything else that's going on in our world today. That's just the bottom line. And what the Westworld reboot gets wrong is, despite the money that you put in there and some good performances and how slick it looks, they just seem like they're interested in jizzing all over themselves, trying to say, look how big we can be, look how much stuff we can talk about.
Well,
and nobody cares about robots.
My brother-in-law, who had watched this movie before, he's the one that introduced me to this. He's 12 years older than I am. So I remember watching this kid. He's like, "Oh, you watch? It's fun to watch." It's like, "Yeah, I watched it." So he's talking about how he watching the series. He's like, "Well, it's like I watched the first season." He said it's really weird. It's like, but then again, it's like we said, it's not the same though. You just said you don't have Yul Brenner. It's just like you can tell it's big corporate, just changing things. They went, because that's what they do. They figure, well, times have changed. We're going to update things and make it more modern.
Yeah, evil megacorp. Yep.
Oh, it's just like, so that's another reason. They'll coffin why I would never want to watch the remake. It's like watching Dukes of Hazzard right now. If they updated the car, like, we're going to have a 2000 Hellcat or something like that.
No, they would have an electric General Lee.
It wouldn't be a General Lee.
I know. Well, the thing that's great about the current HBO show, like I say, is they've obviously spent a lot of money on it. It looks fantastic. Cannot complain about it. And there's a lot of different characters. While filmmakers and TV makers will fiddle around sometimes with the structure of a show, I think unfortunately what gets lost on people is the fact that when you have a show on Netflix which actually has a lot of garbage and vaporware, they do have one sci-fi show called Dark, which is very entertaining, but it's one you have to sit down and watch, and it's about time travel and all the problems that come with following characters when they're younger and older in time and going, okay, this guy in 1980 was this guy in 1950, is this guy in 2010 or whatever. At least when you're watching Dark on Netflix, you get the idea and the setup that this is what you have to follow. Unfortunately, with the Westworld reboot on Netflix, or HBO I should say, you don't really realize until about the end of the first season that they're having all these friggin' timelines, and they clipped them in such a way that you'd have to go back basically and rewatch it. And so the marks are out there basically saying, oh, this is sensational, this is a crafty piece of filmmaking. And it's like, you can be too smart, because in the Westworld movie, again, it's not an evil megacorp. It's one that has very high-end tastes that allow people to have an experience they've never had before. You get the sense of it. The scientists involved in the war room discussing the problems on a statistical level about the rates of infection and the way they seem to be growing, using it as an analogy. That's what professionals do. They decide, well, what's acceptable, what's not. We could talk Six Sigma and lean manufacturing all we want, but they come across as being pros, not evil. And so the real science fiction part to it is, what would you do if you had the opportunity to be in a theme park where all the rules are meant to be broken, or there's no rules, and they only, like I say, tease you with it, but of course you don't really know why they break down and all that too. So some people might try to throw a metaphor in there. I choose not to, simply because it turns into a chase movie, and that's the only thing stopping this from being fantastic. But it's an excellent film. It's one we're going to be talking about a little bit later on our top 10 movies here for 1973. What final thoughts do you have on that, or the TV show?
I just like to correct the error. Future World was not one of the three parks. It was Medieval World, Wild West World, and then there was also what was the other one? Roman World.
Roman World. Yeah.
Future World was the second one with
that's
Peter.
The movie in 75 or 76.
Yeah, with Peter Fonda. And I gotta say, out of the two, I always remember the Peter Fonda Future World more than I remember this one. I remember parts from this one when it comes to this movie before I went to watch it tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Future World, I always remember that more because it's just like the two bumbling idiot reporters going in. We're gonna get a story, and they get trapped under this. So, but my final thoughts for this movie is like, if you've seen the TV show and you're not a fan of it, go back and watch this movie. You might be surprised. You're like, wow, this is actually really great. Why did they not do exactly what they did here? Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say this, like I say, I think it's a good film, great in spots, especially the first half of it. I also think that one thing that's very good, I did not mention before, and it's not the score. There's not a lot of waste in this movie. It moves along. It's maybe 90 minutes. It's pretty sharp. Made a lot of money. It was a very successful film. It was one of the last really decent, successful films for MGM Studios back at that time in the early 70s. Not sure if anybody really cares about it, but it's just noteworthy to me in that Michael Crichton went on to do so many other things that people, really, really like what he did there.
Did you hear though? If you heard about the story about this movie, originally he didn't. They asked him why didn't you? He was asked why he didn't do a book for this movie, or why didn't do a movie then do do the movie first or second after they did the book, and he said because the visualizations it wouldn't work in the book. Because in order to get the story, you have to see what's going on, and it just wouldn't. He said it wouldn't work if writing on his book, and this was like his first directorial debut, and he kind of was leery about this too because he's like, I really don't want to be the director and stuff, but he said apparently people say I'm good at it, so they gave him that, and at the time MGM had a horrible reputation with actors for treating them horribly, stuff. MGM tried demanded a rescript or basically to change the script demands, redo everything. It got to the point it became just a headache. So but they finally made it, under what was it, a $1.2 million thing, and ended up making like 10 or 12.
Yeah, yeah, it was a 10-bagger basically. I mean,
yeah,
really.
yeah. So, but yeah, but I love this movie. So it's like in the future of 1983.
Well, I mean, again, that's 12 years earlier. It's just like Escape from New York, where they talk about 1999 or 97 or whatever.
10 years in the future, apparently. They said they're going to have androids, robots. So, like, boy, were they wrong.
Well, the great thing about Michael Crichton, obviously he did Jurassic Park, Congo, Disclosure, Andromeda Strain. He is a medical guy, so he's got that lens that he looks through stuff and writes things in that way. And I think that's great. I think, unfortunately, the paint by numbers approach, so prevalent in today's movies, especially the big budget ones, lack that specific sort of lens that you can look through. And I have always known that, hey, I kind of like Jurassic Park. I kind of like the series. A little goofy, a little silly, but there's something about the science part I always liked. And then you find out other movies and you go, okay, who's this guy? Oh, it's this novelist, Michael Crichton. Oh, this guy's a legitimate science guy. So it explains why you see stuff being discussed. It explains some of the manufacturing part to it. It explains the science fiction setting in this particular case, and it has to do with how humans interact, because that's science fiction. That's the science part. The fiction is what may be there, and you really don't get that these days. So, yeah, definitely a very good experience to see. If you guys ever get a chance to see it, go see the original Westworld. Absolutely fantastic. All right, Doctor, I'd like to thank you for showing up again tonight, as usual. I'd like to thank everybody for listening, everybody sharing and all that, too. If you got any recommendations, let me know so we can give it a coverage, whether it's on the Sci-Fi Show, the Two Extreme Horror Show, Extreme Classics.
Like I always say, if you're not happy with the movie, go watch the sequel and see how much better the sequel is.
Exactly. And pretty soon we're going to be talking about Future World. Get it? And the future will be Thanks for listening. As always, stay extreme.